Next question is the IndeGO Bond. Anything to help frame that and get us started?
Well, as you just heard from our consultants, we've got some needs in this community, and the council's certainly taken those steps to give the voters of the community the opportunity to weigh in on that. So over the next several weeks leading up to the April election, to help provide more information to the community, staff wants to go just a little bit deeper dive on these different subject areas. So tonight we're going to start with streets and sidewalks. Lisa Reynolds is here to give that presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Back again to talk to you all about streets a little bit more, but this time, as City Manager mentioned, as it relates to the IndeGO Bond. So the bucket, if you will, for the IndeGO Bond that relates to infrastructure or street transportation infrastructure is broken out. It's a $55 million question, and the breakdown of that is $30 million that would be dedicated for streets, $15 million that would be dedicated for bridges, and $10 that would go for sidewalks. We'll talk about streets first. I will be back to talk to you again about bridges for a dedicated study session in another couple months. So tonight we'll talk about streets and sidewalks. Some pictures you've seen of average, we'll say average for town. These streets are about in the 50s range for PCI. As you probably remember and are tired of me telling you, but we have roughly $430 million in deferred maintenance in our roadway network. So the $30 million that would potentially come from the IndeGO Bond, we plan to attack roughly as far as we can get on 295 lane miles and taking a neighborhood approach. And what I mean by that is that we would target whole neighborhoods, and we're using a cutoff of 40, a PCI rating of 40 to determine those locations that we would attack. If you recall, and if, from previous presentations, the breakdown of our road network from a PCI perspective right now is roughly 48% of our streets are what we would consider good condition and in the rating area we want them to be, and 52% would be below a 60 PCI rating. So fair to poor rating, and several of our neighborhoods are even in the 20s, which is effectively crumbling. So again, neighborhood approach, so we would look at overlaying entire neighborhoods with these funds, and still focusing, as you passed in the resolution just last Monday, with the intent and oversight of the use of these funds, we would still be doing our normal preventative or pavement maintenance program through the street sales tax in conjunction with the bond dollars. So the bonds would focus on the neighborhoods, and we would continue to do the overlay and seals with the regular street sales tax and use that to attack the collectors in their arterials, as those need overlay more frequently due to traffic volumes than the residential neighborhoods do. So the need is great, $430 million in deferred maintenance. We have 600 center lane miles roughly in town, which equates to 1,400 lane miles. And again, we plan to go as far as we can with just 295. So roughly 20% is what this would allow us to target. The annual maintenance budget for the pavement maintenance program that exists with the street sales tax funds spends roughly $4.75 million a year. 4.6 of that is contracted out for seals and overlay, and roughly 150,000 is done doing in-house crack filling and things like that, and pavement patching that our street maintenance division takes care of. Again, here just is a recap of some PCI scores over the years. I will say, initial reports look like we've stopped some of the extreme bleeding. If you look at the numbers in 2016, we were at an average, citywide average of 63. In 22, that dropped to a 50. I will qualify that. We got the numbers in 22, so we officially call it out as 22, but that data collection actually started and was collected in 21. So there were actually, since the 22 data you see here and the 24 that we just compiled, was actually 3 pavement maintenance cycles with the new program that includes seals. So we didn't lose ground this time and gained 3 points. So while that's exciting, obviously to bring it up to where we would like it to be, we just don't have the funds to do it. It continues to fail faster than we can keep up. Common question that we get, I'm sure you get it too, you have a street sales tax, what's it going toward? it's going towards street maintenance, obviously. Again, that $4.75 million that we talked about. But here's a breakdown of some of the other things. And also I put there the ballot language from the sales tax from 2017 when it was renewed to be a perpetual sales tax. All the allowed uses of the street sales tax, everybody, there's a misconception out there that you can only use it for overlay, you can only use it for streets. In fact, we can use it for quite a few things, but there's just not the funds to go and use it for all the other things, unfortunately. So our primary buckets that we budget, and you see these in the budgets every year, but just shy of the $5 million for pavement maintenance operations. We have $1.75 million roughly in annual debt service for the mini bond that was taken also back in 2017 that purchased the new snow plows and things like that, and did some intersection improvements and other street maintenance. And then the street sales tax also funds our match for federal and state grants. So put $5 million, sometimes some of that's reimbursable. So our current fiscal year, we have roughly $7 million and change that we're dedicating to capital projects that are grant funded. We stand to get roughly $3 million of that back. So, net of $4. And then anything that's left over would be salt, and we pay for a few of the street maintenance worker salaries out of that, certainly not all of them, but 6 or 7 of them, and other crack filling materials and things like that, pavement patching and all those things. I know this is something you guys get a lot of questions on, so do you have any questions while we're on topic? Okay.
I think we're good, thank you.
I will say also, another common thing that we hear is, well, the sales tax, everything's gone up in price, so you should still be keeping pace with what it was when it was approved initially. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case either. While yes, consumer goods we're all seeing the cost of inflation, and go to Target, go to Quick Trip, all these places, and you're paying more than you did a few years ago. But unfortunately, construction is outpacing normal consumer inflation considerably. And so we're seeing, 30% year over year increases in overlay, or we've seen, it's finally stabilizing, but we've seen lots of instances where we've requested bid proposals for materials, and this could be pipe or materials for patching or a host of things in municipal services. But, shortly after COVID, those bids were guaranteed that day. We're finally getting them to where the price might be guaranteed for a couple weeks or a month, but we don't get okay, this is good for 6 months and, we'll talk when you decide. That's just not the case anymore. And the numbers continue to exponentially inflate. So while the percentage sales tax has held and inflation, when I started with the city, this was roughly probably a $9 million fund, and now it's roughly a $12 million fund. But the cost of doing projects has grown. So we are up against that. Don't think anything else on sales tax. And to hop over to sidewalks really quickly, you already heard actually a great presentation on that, so I won't belabor it really much for you, but just a couple highlights. The school district bus policy for independent school districts says that they will bus you have to be further than a mile from the schools. Many of our schools don't have any sidewalk infrastructure within that mile. Castle Park comes to mind. I did meet with the superintendents of both Fort Osage and Independent School District and talk to them about what sites had the greatest need. And they gave me a total list of 7 schools to target, all elementaries. And while I initially had thought, we'll go and we'll just do sidewalks in a radius around the school, they said, no, let's go with just on the arterials even, because that is the highest traffic and the most risk to those students. So our plan would be to target as that mile to mile and a half on the arterials in front of all those 7 schools. And again, common question that I hear is, $10 million for sidewalks around 7 schools, that seems obscene. How can it possibly cost that much? What you gotta think about when it comes to adding sidewalks, this is added infrastructure in places that it doesn't exist at all today in most of these cases. We'll probably have to do easement acquisition. We will have to account for ADA compliance, and we will have to account for, in some instances, stormwater infrastructure that doesn't exist today, because some of these will replace ditches or things like that to put the sidewalk infrastructure in. So since we're building impervious area, we have to have storm facilities to collect the runoff. So it's unfortunately not just as simple as go and do the flat work. So there are quite a few other things that go into it, but anything that isn't, if there's overage on, say we get a great deal and we can do it for less than 10, all that still is focused on additional elementary schools or reaching out into the residential areas surrounding those, say, 7 schools. So with that, rapid fire, can I answer any questions for you?
Any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.